When Jonathan Antoine first stepped onto the stage of Britain's Got Talent in 2012 as part of the opera duo Jonathan and Charlotte, no one expected the teenage boy with long, curly hair and visible nervousness to become an international sensation. At just 17, Jonathan's voice silenced skeptics and stunned judges, with Simon Cowell even calling him unbelievable. But while the world saw a powerhouse tenor emerge overnight, few knew the intense battles Jonathan was fighting offstage. Crippling anxiety, body image struggles, and years of bullying that left deep emotional scars. His stunning audition with The Prayer catapulted him and Charlotte into instant fame, but the spotlight came with a double-edged sword: the pressure to stay relevant, the scrutiny from the media, and a sudden loss of privacy. What made Jonathan's story more captivating was his authenticity. He wasn't a polished showman, but a raw talent who connected deeply with audiences. That connection turned into a loyal fan base, but also invited harsh commentary about his appearance, which he later revealed caused severe anxiety and even depression. And yet Jonathan chose not to quit. Instead, he made a bold move in 2014, ending the duo with Charlotte and launching his solo career. It was a turning point, one that many questioned at the time, but would ultimately define who he would become. In 2014, just 2 years after their unforgettable debut on Britain's Got Talent, Jonathan Antoine and Charlotte Giaconelli made a joint announcement that sent shockwaves through their fan base. They were parting ways professionally. For many, it seemed unthinkable. The duo had released 2 successful albums together, Together and Perhaps Love, and their chemistry both vocally and personally was adored by millions. But behind the scenes, Jonathan was quietly wrestling with his own aspirations and his growing desire to shape his identity outside the shadow of the duo. According to interviews at the time, Jonathan had always felt a pull toward exploring his voice in deeper, more classical solo work, while Charlotte leaned toward musical theater and pop influences. The decision wasn't born from conflict, but from mutual understanding and respect, a rare and mature move for artists barely in their 20s. But even with the amicable tone, the split left Jonathan facing an uncertain future. He was no longer the underdog with a partner by his side. Now he had to prove to the world, and to himself, that he could thrive on his own. The pressure mounted as critics and fans alike questioned whether he could succeed solo, or whether the magic had been in the partnership all along. It was a make-or-break moment that could have easily ended his career. But what happened next would silence every doubt. After stepping out on his own, Jonathan Antoine wasted no time redefining his musical identity. In 2014, the same year he split from Charlotte, Jonathan released his debut solo album Tenore, which soared to #1 on the UK classical charts. It wasn't just a commercial win, it was an artistic rebirth. Jonathan was no longer the other half of a duo. He was now a commanding tenor whose emotional depth and vocal control rivaled that of seasoned opera veterans. The success of Tenore proved he could captivate audiences entirely on his own, but it also came with new pressures, managing the weight of expectations, navigating a new team, and dealing with the brutal self-doubt that often haunts solo performers. Still, Jonathan pushed forward. He followed up with his 2016 album Believe, a powerful mix of arias, cinematic ballads, and personal favorites that showcased a matured voice and bolder presence. Critics called it hauntingly beautiful and praised his evolution as an artist. But behind that powerful voice remained a deeply human figure. Johnny continued to speak openly about mental health, even using interviews and social media to share his ongoing battle with anxiety and depression. Far from hiding these struggles, he turned them into a source of strength, showing fans that vulnerability didn't make him weaker, it made him real. As his music reached global audiences from the US to Japan to South America, Jonathan had officially stepped out of the shadow of Britain's Got Talent and into a spotlight of his own making. By the time the world entered the 2020s, Jonathan Antoine was already a respected name in classical crossover circles. But what happened in the years that followed left even longtime fans doing a double take. As the pandemic reshaped the entertainment industry, Jonathan used the downtime not to pause, but to transform, physically, emotionally, and musically. Through a mix of disciplined self-care and introspection, Jonathan underwent a remarkable health journey that saw him shed a significant amount of weight. But this wasn't just about appearance. It was about reclaiming control over his life. In interviews, he shared that his journey wasn't fueled by industry pressure, but by a desire to feel stronger on stage and more confident in himself. The transformation was slow, steady, and entirely on his terms. Fans were shocked when he reappeared with a slimmer frame, exuding a new confidence that radiated in both his performances and his public persona. He was no longer hiding behind humility or deflecting praise. He stood taller, both literally and figuratively. But perhaps even more striking than the physical change was the emotional openness that followed. Jonathan began sharing more personal stories with fans, opening up about his fears, insecurities, and the struggles he still faces despite his fame. That vulnerability only deepened his connection with his audience. And as the world emerged from lockdowns, Jonathan emerged renewed, not just as a singer, but as a symbol of perseverance. The boy with stage fright had become a man who could own the stage with unshakable presence. And yet the most unexpected twist in his story was still to come. Just when fans thought they had seen every evolution of Jonathan Antoine, 2023 brought a curveball that no one anticipated. Rumors began circulating that Hollywood producers had reached out to the tenor with a surprising offer, not to sing, but to act. After years of turning down flashy TV cameos and rejecting opportunities that didn't align with his artistry, Jonathan reportedly sat down for a series of closed-door meetings in Los Angeles. Industry insiders claimed that a major streaming platform was developing a biopic-style musical drama, and Jonathan was being considered not only for the soundtrack, but potentially to play himself in a fictionalized story inspired by his real-life journey. At first, fans and critics alike were skeptical. Could someone as classically trained and famously private as Jonathan Antoine really step into the world of scripted drama and hold his own? But sources close to his team revealed that Jonathan was more open than ever to exploring new mediums. In fact, he had reportedly begun taking private acting workshops in London and consulting with voice coaches from the film industry. Though no official deal has been confirmed to this day, the mere possibility of Jonathan stepping into acting sent waves through his fan base. It wasn't just about career expansion. It was about breaking out of every mold he'd ever been placed in. From bullied teen to classical icon and now potentially a cinematic figure, Jonathan Antoine was on the verge of something completely new. And yet, his next big move wasn't for himself. It was for someone who had been missing from the spotlight for far too long. After nearly a decade of separation, whispers of a reunion between Jonathan Antoine and his former singing partner, Charlotte Giaconelli, began to stir online, and the internet collectively held its breath. The duo, who had become household names as teenagers on Britain's Got Talent in 2012, had gone their separate ways in 2014 to pursue solo careers. Though both had found success independently, fans never quite let go of the magic they created as a pair. In 2024, an anonymous Reddit post claiming to have spotted the two in a London recording studio went viral overnight. Music blogs picked it up. Fan accounts started speculating wildly, and soon after, Jonathan himself posted a cryptic photo on Instagram. Two mugs side by side on a piano, tagged simply #FullCircle. Within hours, Shaw responded with a post of her own, an old backstage picture of them laughing, captioned, "Some chapters never really end." It was all the internet needed to explode. A week later, the rumors were confirmed. Jonathan and Charlotte would reunite for a one-night-only charity concert at the Royal Albert Hall. Tickets sold out within minutes. The event, held in support of mental health awareness, was not only a nostalgic triumph, but a powerful message about healing, growth, and honoring the past. When the two finally walked on stage together, the ovation was deafening. Tears flowed freely not just from the audience, but from the singers themselves. They didn't just sing. They reclaimed a bond that had never truly been broken. And just when fans thought this would be the emotional climax of Jonathan's story, a completely different shockwave was about to rock his career from across the Atlantic. In early 2025, just months after his emotional reunion with Charlotte Giaconelli, Jonathan Antoine's career took a dramatic turn, this time across the ocean. It started quietly when murmurs in the entertainment press that an American talent agency had extended a high-level invitation to Jonathan. But as details emerged, it became clear this wasn't just any offer. The producers of a major American singing competition revival, rumored to be an all-star version of The Voice or a reimagined American Idol, wanted Jonathan not as a contestant but as a celebrity coach. The proposition stunned the public. A British classical tenor, known for his humility and artistic purity, stepping into the glitzy, often superficial world of American reality TV, it seemed almost unthinkable. But insiders revealed that Jonathan saw it as a challenge, a platform to promote genuine artistry in a commercial space drowning in spectacle. Still, it wasn't an easy decision. Jonathan reportedly spent weeks in private deliberation, consulting with his team, his family, and even mentors from his conservatory days. His biggest concern wasn't the fame. It was whether he could stay true to himself in a format known for drama and viral sound bites. But ultimately, it was the promise of mentorship that won him over. He would be guiding young vocalists, many of whom, like him, came from humble backgrounds and carried deep emotional stories. When the announcement finally dropped, Jonathan Antoine joined the Voice Legends edition as the first ever non-American coach. It made international headlines. Twitter trended with his name, music forums lit up with anticipation, and fans from both sides of the Atlantic cheered. What followed was a whirlwind of rehearsals, press tours, and tearful on-screen moments as Jonathan connected deeply with contestants in ways that defied the show's usual format. But behind the cameras, a more personal transformation was quietly unfolding, one that would bring Jonathan face to face with a battle he thought he had long conquered. As Jonathan Antoine stood under the dazzling lights of America's biggest music stage, guiding a new generation of vocalists with warmth and wisdom, few knew the internal storm he was quietly weathering. Despite his outward success and global admiration, Jonathan was once again grappling with the shadows of his past, this time not on stage, but in silence. In late 2025, sources close to the singer revealed that he had voluntarily stepped back from several high-profile engagements, citing mental and emotional recalibration as the reason. The Jonathan the world saw, charming, composed, and compassionate, was, behind closed doors, a man revisiting the emotional scars that had shaped his rise. Years of pressure, perfectionism, and lingering insecurities from his traumatic youth had begun to take their toll. But this time, Jonathan chose a different path. Instead of hiding, he spoke up. In an exclusive Raw podcast episode with a close friend, Jonathan opened up for the first time in years about the cyclical nature of mental health, admitting he still had days where getting out of bed felt like performing for a crowd of critics. He spoke candidly about the cost of fame, the loneliness of global tours, and the quiet nights that brought back voices from the past. Yet he wasn't seeking sympathy. He was seeking connection. And that's exactly what he found. Fans flooded the internet with messages of solidarity, many thanking him for articulating feelings they'd never had the courage to speak aloud. Jonathan's vulnerability, once seen as a weakness by industry executives, became his greatest strength. Through music, mentorship, and honesty, he was redefining what it meant to be a modern artist. Not just a voice to admire, but a soul to relate to. And as the world watched, they realized something profound. Jonathan Antoine's greatest performance wasn't a note he sang. It was the life he chose to live, fully, fearlessly, and unapologetically real.